Horomia.
Tēnā tātou. I roto tūnei ke te mihi kauna ki toku whanaunga e noho atu I roto te mahano o te tūru kai whakahaere o te whare. Tēnā koe. Kāre e mau atu te maka koro mō ia koe engari mō wetahi roto tō rōpu me rātau ngā mā e maka atu I roti aku. Tēnā tātou. E mihi kauna ki ngā āhua katoa mo te ture nei, mō rātau mā e kore e kone, mō rātau e whai kaha I te hikua I tahi atu I te tai I pōneke, mai te wāhi o te oneroa tohe, kaha atu rātau I te rātau. E mihi kauna. Nā te pai hoki kei te tai tata atu tātou ki te oti o te ture nei. A koa te whakaaro wehe I roti aku mō tēnei take. Mr. Chair, I was surprised that that member across the other side of the House dared to suggest that my parliamentary colleague was his taina. I have always known that whakapapa, great as it is, from the maunga mauao, and I thought he was the taina. Taina, Mr. Chair, is junior. And in the sense of the titling of this bill, it is certainly smacks of juniorism in the sense of the suggestions that it is to be the end-all and be-all. It could be the hullabaloo bill for all of that, or how to pull the wool over the Maori's eyes. And, you know, we need to go back in retrospect and remember that the issue rose about making sure that things got to the court, went to the court. And my learned colleague, David Parker, is dead right. There is a cost to all of this. You know, it's like our youngsters who get into the trap of recidivism. This is just like it. If they sin once under the age of 20, they sin 6 times and they get taken to pieces by the legal beagles and those who snuff along in that trough. And I hope this is not what's going to happen here. In the essence of codification, let's make sure who pays for it, how this is done in relation to all of the issues relevant in the parts that we have discussed. There are wide-ranging notions in here, and time will tell how we get through it. But let's all be honest and frank enough to say that this is work over a period of time. And for that member's sake over there, I have no intention of leaving this planet any earlier than him. And that's outrageous, Mr. Chair, that he should even get so dull to start talking about it. And that's how lopsided that member's got, and some of his colleagues, where they're trying to define what time you should leave this planet. Bureaucracy gone mad. That's what this bill smacks of. The Māori Party have tried to couch it, and they've just become over and down bureaucrats. And like I said, when the Prime Minister said in 2003 he was going to get rid of the Māori seats, so I was trying to encourage them to change their vote, because as soon as this bill is through next week, he's going to get rid of the Māori seats. And the difference in this vote is the 4 Māori seats. And this is supposed to be a bill that supports the Māori seats. Mr. Chair, that member also mentioned Wee Parata. Great name, that Parata. I got some whanaunga's Parata, but this Wee Parata was another boundary. And he also said this. He said, for you may take the land, but all you have is the shadow. The land is Māori, and the soul of Māori is the land. That's what Wee Parata said, because it was one of the early challenges. So if you start quoting about one statement, remember the better statements. And that was one of these better political statements. And that is what this bill should be about. You see where I come from? It's paradise. Paradise. It's paradise. Mangatuna, Hauri, great place. Beaches abound. Seals still come up on the bank and bathe and kaimon and all of that stuff. Now the issue is this. No matter what the legislation, no matter what the law, we have always allowed access to people, whether they Pākehā or come from the ACT Party or the Samoan or the local whānau. And I was down in Mohaka River the other day, and this guy said to me, I said, how long are you here for? He said, I'm retired. I've been here for 2 months. He said, you know, the Maori's been letting me come here for 40 years. And in this bill, it is not suggested that Māori are that advanced in intellect and in niceties and good behaviour and hospitable to people who want to visit there. Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Parakura Haramia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to make the point, Mr. Chair, that in Samui, the contiguousness of the land to the Takutai Moana gives them a real strong inherited right that most of them have managed well. They don't need anybody else to come along and tell them this is how you behave and this is why you should do that. And that is something that needs to be highlighted and remembered as you go along in this development. No, Mr. Map, different up north. People flog the whenua and all of that. But in some of the areas where there is a contiguousness of the land to the Takutai Moana, it's the Māori hospitality. It isn't the hospitality of the court. It isn't the hospitality of overseas people. It's the hospitality of those generations who by right have inherited through whakapapa and living there. And that's really important. You know this thing about hangi stones, this hangi stone bit, and this launching the waka and that. I don't know who put that in there. But anyway, you know, one of the confusions, and I was listening to my colleague David Parker the other night, we've got to be quite explicit on what's going to help what in this. You get the Minister of Environment, Minister of Corrections, Minister of Women's Affairs, Ministers, everybody else, and Environment who've got a say on this, on this issue. There needs to be some serious balancing, and people need to go through in the sense of the legislation. Because in some areas now, at Christmas time when you celebrate the great being and whatever else, Maoris go and like to have a hangi. But the RMA says you can't light a hangi. You're not allowed to light a fire. So what's the use of having hangi stones if you can't light a fire? The point is this, that there are contradictions in the law, and they cut over tikanga and tukui'o. Darren Hughes likes having hangi at Christmas. You know, he's well practiced in it. But the tikanga, as versed in the RMA, says, no, don't you use those hangi stones. That's no good. So as I wanted to remind the Minister today, it is, and we did great things. What we did do is keep the unemployment rate down to 5%, not running at 27%. What we made sure that the petrol prices were where they should be. What we made sure that people could pay their bills. What we made sure that people got a job. What we made sure that a Māori television started. What we made sure that health distribution to preschool people was really great. It was a great 9 years. It was a great 8 years. And you voted for it. You knew that we were good. And at the end of the day, it was a great thing.
Relevance.
Order. I called a point of order. Exchange of the House was stopped. There's a point of order. I don't care who started. Everybody stopped. Point of order. Rahui Katne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I fail to see the relevance of this to the part that we're debating at the moment.
Well, I don't need your help, thank you. I would just say to the member invited it herself by interjection and her own interjections. And if the member is going to interject in that manner, the member is going to have to expect some contribution back. And the unfortunate part for the member is that the member speaking has the microphone. It's a huge advantage. So I just say to the member, if you're going to interject, make sure you calculate that the other person's got the microphone and might wander a bit further than you like. But having said that, I have been signalled to the member speaking that he needs to come back to the point. And I think it's a point well made. I call the Honourable Parakura Haramia.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe,
I want to hear more about
Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you, in early days when I first came to Wellington to work out was it in the briefcase, I used to go with this great man called John and Rahui's whānau. And we used to go outside of the social welfare and protest. And he used to say to me, line up out front there at 1 o'clock and we'll make sure this crooked Department of Social Welfare and this government will put them right. And he was working for them at that time. So he'd say, here's the placards, go out and stand just directly over there. So I'd go along there, start yelling out for Mrs. Baisley or somebody else to come out, and what the hell are you doing? And I'd look around, where's the 200? And there was nobody. But that Māori was a great Māori because he defended tikanga. He didn't shudder or shutter or go away. And I was proud to know him, even though sometimes he'd go over to America and come back with big Indian belts and give me those things. But he had international nuances and he knew about it. And I would suggest to that member that I could teach her about some of the things he taught me. Tikanga, Mr. Chair, should not be something left to law. Tikanga is something that we have to live that we have to maintain, that we have to ensure that it is enshrined in our being, that it's not just about kapahaka and tāmoko, which are great things. It's not just about that, or wakahama. They're great things where our young generations participate and they keep going. But tikanga is about living those issues that are relevant to being Māori. And that's all we want to see in this bill, what is relevant to Māori. That we may have to adjust and align, but not sell out, is something that is really, really, really important. And I feel for the 200 who are marching down the road thinking they're going to change the world, and by the time they've got here, the Māori Party has signed it off and there's nothing to come here before. Because there's nothing like being a Māori MP. You get it from the Pākehās, like that silly woman over there who talks about holding your breath under the water and Alice in Wonderland. You wonder where the hell she is. She's writing Peter Pan notions, and that is disgraceful. That is the extreme of the other people in this country. And then you get it from your own cousins, you get it from your own colleagues, especially if you're Māori and you're used to working as a minority amongst a whole lot of Pākehās and Africans and everybody else. You get it from everybody. And worst of all, you get it from your own whānau. So when the hikoi come down, I had whānau on the other side, yelling at me.
Call the Honourable
Mr. Chair, I was going to carry on.
I was wanting to know a bit more about